The prospective bombing of Auschwitz has been heavily debated between both Holocaust historians and military historians for countless decades since the decisive ending of World War II. The debate has caused and brought about much controversy towards the Allies' course of action as to why they ultimately did not bomb Auschwitz. Towards the end of World War II and the inevitable liberation of the Auschwitz Nazi death camp, the Allies had the capability to bomb Auschwitz and definitely could have done so. However, should they have done so relies on the factors that they had enough information to act on it, and would bombing Auschwitz affect the overall outcome of the war, and how accurate the Allied bombers would be in their effectiveness. Some historians who are in favour of the Allied policy for why Auschwitz should not have been bombed argue that the Allied forces merely did not have enough intelligence on the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp, or the final solution plan, early enough, in order to form a plan to ultimately bomb Auschwitz. This is one of the many forefront arguments for why the Allies never bombed the camps. It is said, however, that the Allied forces had actually received in-depth detailed intelligence about Auschwitz-Birkenau from two Jews who had escaped the camp. These two Jews were Rudolf Ribber and Alfred Wexler, who provided in excruciating detail the layout of the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. This brings about the argument that the Allies did in fact have enough information to initiate plans for the Allies to conduct bombing raids on the concentration camp. According to Richard Brittman, before 1944, there was enough generally accurate information about Auschwitz-Birkenau to preclude the argument that the Allies did not bomb the camp because they got the necessary information too late. Brittman's argument here supports the notion that despite the Allies claiming they did not have enough sufficient intelligence, that even before Ribber and Wexler provided information on the concentration camp, that as early as 1942, the Allies had information on the Nazis' plan to exterminate the Jews. Brittman and many other historians do subsequently conclude that the Allies had no excuse not to bomb Auschwitz-Birkenau. Stuart G. Erdheim also supports the same point of view as Brittman, backing up these claims that the Allies' various excuses were in fact no obstacle. Erdheim profoundly states that bombing raids on Auschwitz would have been no more complex than numerous other missions. With these accusations of the abandonment of the Jews directed towards the Allies, it is popular that the part of the reason as to why Auschwitz-Birkenau was never bombed was simply due to as a result of the Allies' indifference to the fate of the Jews, as suggested by David Wyman. The question of whether bombing Auschwitz would have negative implications for the Allies in regards to the outcome of the war effort is brought about. Now, there were many appeals from various groups and people begging for the Allies, or more specifically, the US, to bomb Auschwitz. In June 1944, John W. Pillay, who was the executive director of the War Refugee Board, called for them to bomb it. In August 1944, A. Leon Kubowiecki, head of the Rescue Department of the World Jewish Congress, also called for the gas chambers to be bombed. These requests were swiftly denied by the Assistant Secretary of War, John J. McCloy, who subsequently denied these requests as he believed that no aircraft could be spared in turn to bomb Auschwitz. He believed that if he did so, there would be a negative effect on the Allies and their overall outcome on the war at hand. Politically, they also did not want to make the war seem like it was a Jewish war. The US government firmly stuck to the fact that they believed that ultimately defeating Hitler and the German army was the best and most effective way to save the Jews. To combat this conception, historian Richard G. Davis believes that conducting this bombing raid would have only taken a minimum of 4 missions of approximately 75 effective heavy bomber sorties, expressing how this would not have detracted from the war effort to any extent, noting that the Air Force flew at roughly 10,700 bombers per month. In order for Auschwitz-Birkenau to be bombed, debate on how accurate Allied bombers were also arose. Through more recently conducted research, Holocaust and military historians contested the general stance that Auschwitz should have been bombed. They suggested that air raids would have been inaccurate at high levels and ineffective at lower ones, due to strong German air defences. Precision bombing at the time wasn't very reliable as well, with it being discovered that less than 20% of the bombs dropped by the US landed within the radius of their intended target. Morally, with this knowledge, it would have been possibly catastrophic if the Allies did drop bombs on the concentration camp, as the camp would have had thousands of pounds of bombs dropped on it, with there being a high chance that thousands of Jewish prisoners of war would have been killed instead, more than what would have been saved on the ground, as bombs would have most likely hit the barracks where Jews resided, rather than hit and destroy the gas chambers. This study shed much light on the many implications of the Allies faced when considering bombing Auschwitz. Historian Jared Weinberg writes in favor of the Allies not bombing the camp, promoting that the idea that men who were dedicated to the killing program were likely to be halted in their tracks by a few line cuts on the railway or the blowing up of a gas chamber is preposterous, showing how the German forces would not be in any means give up if a few rail lines were broken. Through endless debate, whether the Allies could and should have bombed Auschwitz remains a fierce topic in which many arguments can be put forth. The Allies most definitely had the capability to conduct bombing raids on Auschwitz. Conversely though, they should not have bombed Auschwitz, as there were too many factors which would need to be right in order for it to be successful. Even though the Allies had the intelligence needed, and the outcome of the war most likely would not have changed, it was too risky to send thousands of bombs down when there was a strong possibility that they could have killed more Jews than they may have saved.